So Mike's teaching me some things about life through growing via weed.
Growing via weed.
Yeah, I
love when you vlog when you just woke up.
I know, cause I'm like I'm a idiot. Alright, time to wake up now, and it's time to go work out, because exercise is important when keeping a healthy mind.
There you go.
Thanks for the motivation. Motivation, Mike! Look who came to join me, Raya and Ginger. They're just doing the opposite of working out and kind of just laying down. They're like best buds now. Oh, as I say that, Ginger pushes Raya. You're just way sweeter than this, are you? Oh, you're like, what? What is this? She's like, why do you have to continue working out? Why can't you just play with me? Alright, so that was a good workout. I can't do too much, like nothing too crazy because of my new tattoo, and I have a very bad right forearm. I have some sort of tendonitis in it. Could be wrong. I could have something else, but I believe that's what it is. But yeah, it hurts like a bitch. Anyways, I'm gonna get ready here. Mike and I are gonna go to the mall and just talk about ourselves, talk about our relationship, see where things are at right now, see how things are going. Yeah, let's go learn about Mike and I.
Alright guys, welcome back to the night shift. You're working late time.
No, it's not it. Alright, so we didn't end up going to the mall. This is Mike Majlak, as some of you know. And I just thought we'd talk more about our relationship today. Depression, how we met, where we met. Do you remember when we first met?
Yes, I do actually. I'm so happy I do, because I was really nervous when you asked me that I wasn't going to. I do.
Because I don't.
You know, that's fine. I'm not mad at you, but I'm really surprised that I do. First time we ever met was at Logan's apartment.
Okay, was that the W?
At the W. I went there to
fake buy comp.
Yeah, but why was I don't remember why was I really there? Maybe that was why. Maybe he asked me to come do it.
Yeah.
Logan asked me to come like fake that I was buying Kong to trick Ayla for a vlog. And when I went in there, I saw instead of Logan or Ayla, who I had been watching my whole life, that the coolest person in the room was actually Logan's dwarf friend Evan, and he was the man. But I was only there for like, I don't know, like an hour or some shit.
Yeah, just filming the whole time. We didn't really talk either. I was the one that opened the door, right?
Yeah.
I was like the first person like you saw coming in.
Yeah, and I don't think I had like that much like experience with like dwarfs like in my life. So when it happened, like obviously I know how to act around people always. So I was just like, "What up, man?" You were really like broed out at the time. You were still like college.
Wait, did I have my long hair?
Yeah, long hair,
oh
dude.
my god.
You were crushing it, bro. You were crushing it.
I look like a idiot.
No way, dude.
Did you ever think that you would be living with us?
No. That was the first time I ever met Logan and you, and so like I didn't have any expectations. I thought I was just gonna walk out of there and just go back to like work and shit, which by the way I did for like 2 years after that, you know.
Wait, so how did you and Logan meet then?
At Travis Pastrana's house. We did like a bunch of brand deal stuff beforehand. Then we met at Pastrana. Yeah, for Lovesac. And then we met up at Pastrana's house, Roman Atwood, did a piece of content there, and then kept having these like after meetups after. And then it led into Park City. Then we became friends, more and more. You know, things kind of jumped off after Tokyo because he needed to advise me. He needed somebody to smack him on the wrist when he was being dumb.
That was a really hard time for you, wasn't it?
It was. Like, me and him were already really good friends, and it was hard to watch him go through that. And I remember I talked to him the day it happened, the night before it went out, as well as on New Year's Day when it happened. And people were just hitting me up like crazy, like left and right. Hundreds of people. Like, yo, did you see this? And it was the first thing I woke up to. The really toughness started in the months after because there was so much friction on the team. So many people were fighting over, like, what was, you know, a $50 million year the year before, and people saw it like as an opportunity to like get involved, get out, get in, start fights, whatever. And so there's a lot of fighting. It was tough for me because like I was the new guy, and so I was getting blamed for shit. I was getting dragged into stuff that I didn't want to be a part of. We made it out. We got through the storm. We got the right people, and so, you know, I make believe that none of it ever happened. That's me.
Yeah.
That's what I personally do. Logan doesn't do that, but when people ask me about Tokyo, I ask them what they're talking about because I don't remember it.
Energy was very, very different around that time. There's a lot of negative, hateful energy. Now, like you said, it's changed to where I want to say less.
There's definitely less apologies going out for sure, but at the same time, there's also a really learning, awareness, and a massive, you know, program of just thinking before acting.
So speaking of awareness, you battle with depression. right?
Mm-hmm.
How long would you say you've been battling with depression?
I mean, as you know, like, my story is weird. It's hard to really pinpoint when the depression and more so the anxiety, which is kind of my real issue, and also just really negative thoughts and negative thinking, like, when that all started. Was it the predecessor and the catalyst and the reason why I started using drugs, or did it start while I was using drugs or after? You know what I'm saying? It's really, really hard to pinpoint, but I've been dealing with some level of mental distress or set of mental problems since I was probably like 16 or 18 years old. So it's been a long time. It's been a 15 to 20 year battle with different demons and them presenting themselves in different ways and in different mental issues. It's been waves of it, better times, worse times, better times, worse times.
You hide it pretty well though, and you're not really open about it. Like, do you go to talk to anyone? Like, do you go or have gone to like psychiatrists? Or,
yeah. For sure. I have a therapist now that I still go to. Not as much as I should, just because I'm always busy. I've gone to tons of therapists like my whole life, especially post-addiction, like after I got off of drugs. I've seen a lot of therapists, psychologists, psychiatric, people in that field. As far as hiding it goes, I have always been a joker and a jokester and a clown, and like I love making people laugh and I love laughing myself. I think that a lot of it is really just like deflecting. You know what I'm saying? I spend a lot of time, which, by the way, I don't even know if it's always unhealthy to take things that should be painful and make them funny. Like, by the way, we saw happen kind of with Tokyo. You know what I'm saying? With Logan. But for me, it's happened my whole life as well. I've dealt with death, breakups, drug addiction, parents divorcing when I was younger, traumatic injuries that people don't even know the half of, where I've almost died, not thousands, but where I've almost died almost a dozen times, like on operating tables, having organs removed, legs reconstructed, fractured skull, like everything.
Oh my God.
All of that I've dealt with, like laughing about it and just being like, yo, like none of this is as serious as it is. And so sometimes it was, and sometimes I shouldn't have deflected, but a lot of times that's my escape.
Yeah, I would say I would do the same thing kind of like with my videos. Instead of like looking at like the top shelf, driving a car, like anything that I have to do differently, instead of just like dreading about it, being sad about it, why not just like make jokes about it and laugh at it? Which like you said, I don't know if that's healthy or not.
I just don't know that it's unhealthy either, because a lot of people always say like, oh, like stop like deflecting with comedy or whatever, and like people say that to me all the time, and I'm just like, I mean, why do I have to do that? You know what I'm saying?
Instead of just being sad about it all the time,
I don't see any
joy or joyfulness out of it.
Exactly.
And humor, laughing.
Exactly.
Like literally, laughter is the best medicine. I don't care what anyone says.
That's 1,000%. That's 1,000%. Like I'm sure we'll talk about like a lot of different like coping skills today and stuff like that. And I talk about the gym. I mean, should we just get into it?
Yeah.
Like I talk about the gym a lot. I talk about practicing even somewhat better eating habits. I talk about doing your best to think positively. And the thing about me is I'm not like one of those people that's like, go out there and give up your favorite meals. Stay in the gym 2.5 hours per day. Just do anything. Because this is the most important thing for people right now watching this video who are struggling. And they see someone that's, look at this. I got this through 2.5 hours dedicated. People don't want to hear that shit. People that can't get off their couch because they're in a depressed state that's so bad that they are thinking about ways out, like all that stuff. They don't want to hear about how you got to be the best you've ever been in your life. They want to hear about how did you take that first step to get to a place where you have a fighting chance. Those are the people I talk to. I talk to the people that are literally, they don't know what to do. You know what I'm saying? Because I've been there before, literally multiple times. So what I always say is like, go to the gym for 5 minutes. If that's all you could do is go to the gym for 5 minutes and get a little sweaty, that's great. Because that's a start. You did something. If you can, for one meal a day, not get the large fries and all you get is the small fries, you are making strides. It's about making strides. It's never going to be about like, how do I go from here to here? It's about how do I take small steps to start a series of events that will make my life better. Just little steps at first. It's the one time in life where I encourage you to think small. Like think small, literally. Don't have some crazy dream. Do whatever you can to like start that ripple effect that will become a massive change in your life. It'll just take time.
Right. People just think they can get right into it aggressively. Like, no, just take baby steps at a time, and then eventually you'll get to that point. When you mentioned about the food, I was talking to Spencer about him. He was reading this research now that there's a correlation between your brain and your stomach. So, like, when you eat all this unhealthy, bad food, that will send bad signals to your brain and make you depressed. Like when they're sad, they eat ice cream. Or when they're sad, they eat fast food,
high sugar, high acidity,
carbs,
all that stuff.
and then they're like wondering why they're still sad afterwards, even though they ate quote unquote their favorite meal. Maybe that's just not good for you.
On that note, like depression, anxiety, all of those things are all based on cycles. And so what you have to do is break the cycle. And so like on Spencer's note on the food, what happens is whether it's because of the weight gain or the effect of the stomach on the brain, people are sad because something happened in their life. Then they eat ice cream and they're sad because they ate ice cream and which had poor signals, made them fat or whatever. Now they're sad again. Guess what they do? Eat ice cream. Then they're sad because they ate ice cream, so they eat French. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just this horrible cycle of bad habits, and more so, my therapist always told me, breaking boundaries that you set for yourself. And so the most important thing that my therapist always told me was that the best way to like a healthy mind and on the anxiety and depression point are not breaking boundaries that you set for yourself. And so like some of the boundaries that I've set for myself are like getting enough sleep, which is super important, eating semi healthy, not having a ton of unprotected sex. That was something I've always had like a major problem with because it causes me anxiety the next day, severe anxiety, because for obvious reasons, like you're scared, you're nervous about what you've done. All those boundaries that you set for yourself, when you find yourself starting to stay inside the boundaries you set for yourself, as small as they may be. Today I'm gonna eat a little bit healthier. Once you do that and you don't leave it, it lessens anxiety and depression.
It makes you feel good about yourself. Yeah. You're like, and it's like, I want to do it more.
Yes.
And it's like, yo, let's keep working towards this.
Just little things, just little steps. And it's like the biggest note.
So you talk about being sad when eating ice cream. Do you think there's a difference between being sad and being depressed?
Yes, 100%.
Like, there is.
Yeah, there is. There is. Sadness.
Because a lot of people don't think there is. They think it's just like there's no such thing as depression. They're just sad.
Well, those people are just like misinformed. I mean, listen, like, and it's not an excuse, but that's why I can sit in a $7 or $8 million house and still be sad or still feel that way. Yeah. It's why you can sit in an $8 million house on certain days and still feel that way. But it doesn't always have anything to do with your circumstance. Sadness is a human emotion. That happens to everyone. You have a breakup. Someone in your family dies. You stub your toe.
Yeah, you're not depressed afterwards. You're just sad afterwards.
And it's a human emotion that everybody deals with. Depression is a mental or is a chemical imbalance or some sort of mental issue that is long bouts of extreme sadness that aren't brought on by anything and don't go away for any reason. Almost like you're, like I've said on the show, it's like you're in this under this blanket of sadness that you can't take off ever. No matter how much money you make, no matter how nice the car is, whatever. Until you start to find out what those things are that are really deep down causing that sadness and that depression, and you start to work on those, which could be, your weight, which could be stuff that happened to you as a child that you need to uncover with a therapist, whatever those things are, or if it's a chemical imbalance and you have to go as far as using some sort of prescription drug.
Do you think you could be sad for so long they could go into depression? Could you go to like sad to depressed or depressed to sad?
I think that sadness can lead into depression. I think that a lot of people deal with, especially people that deal with more temporary depression as opposed to lifelong battles. Some of those temporary depressions are brought on by events that were originally just sadness, horrible breakups, death. But then when they're not processed correctly, become depression. You know what I'm saying? And it might be a temporary bout. Maybe it's not something you have deep down in you. Some people then do have to turn to meds, do have to turn to things to get them back on track, out of that hole, operating properly, and then they can get out.
So you mentioned about medication. You also mentioned, not here, but in the house, that you just came off of those medications.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
I feel good right now. I've been super blessed and like lucky, call it whatever you want, whatever name you want to give it, to feel as good as I do coming off of them. What I did was I purposefully stayed as low as I could I was on antidepressants for the past like 5 or 6 years. And every time they're like, let's do a dose raise, let's go to a stronger med. By the way, I'm not even saying that the doctors were wrong for that. I'm saying I purposely suffered more through it to keep my dose as low as possible because I knew that I was going to get to a point where I wanted to come off. Like on Lexapro, I was on a low dose, and then I was just on a drug called Effexor. You can go up as high as like 300 milligrams on Effexor. I never went above 75, which is considered like a mild dose. And so when it came time to get off of it, I only had to go down to 37.5 for a month and a half or 2 months, and then dropped it completely because that's technically the lowest dose, 37.5. There was like a few days after the initial wean, and then after I stopped completely, where I felt really shitty, really tired, heavy anxiety, severe, like pretty severe depression, but this is all normal shit until your brain rebalances. The reason I got off the meds, by the way, too, because like for people watching this that might be thinking like, oh, I want to get off or whatever, like I got off one under the supervision of a doctor, which is the only way that you should ever get off meds. There's no, oh, I'm gonna stop today, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm just gonna get off. It's under the supervision of a doctor who is telling you do this, do that, this dose, that dose. And two, I had a really strong plan in place mentally as to how I was going to defeat the demons that potentially could show back up when I stopped the meds, which were racing thoughts, negative thoughts, anxiety, mild depression on certain days. I've never been a severely depressed person. I'm more on the anxious range, right? I knew the things I had to do when I got off, and those are the same things that people watching this should do if they're not going to take meds and they want to just battle it. I knew I had to step up my exercise. I knew I had to get even healthier on the eating side. I knew I needed to sleep a lot. Stop going out to the club, stop partying, be home in bed by 11 o'clock. Getting those hours of sleep, that sleep is really, really important. And so right now I feel really good. I'm not counting any chickens, but like I feel great right now.
Yeah. So you said going to sleep or just like staying home, not going out as much. What about for the people who just like they constantly need to get their mind moving? Because like I'm like the type of person that like if I'm just sitting here like literally on my phone or I'm just sitting here I get caught in that trap of just my thoughts. Yeah. Like I like just thoughts, negative. But even with sleep, dude, I can only sleep for 6 hours a night because the second I wake up in the morning, thoughts going.
Isolating is never the answer. Ever. That includes for depression especially, but also for anxiety, because there were times when my anxiety was so bad that I knew as soon as I go outside into the public, the racing thoughts are going to happen. I have this thing where like, and I still do a little bit, where I feel, this was always one of my biggest things, it's much less now, but where I always felt like people were judging me, like wherever I went, and I know you can relate to this, I'm sure, dude, way worse than me, and so but I feel the way I feel, like I can't explain why, right, and I always felt like people were judging me, I always felt like that, even when it was so wrong, when I was wearing a tuxedo and I looked great and I just got off drugs or I was 5 years off drugs and I should have felt so good about myself. There were so many times in my life where I was like, I would walk in a room and like, even though I'd be smiling, they'd be smiling back at me, I was forcing my smile because I felt like I was being judged. I felt like people were like, this kid's an idiot, or this kid was a drug addict, or this kid, he didn't graduate from college. Like I had all these these issues with self-doubt and with like people judging me, and it was so bad because no one ever was, bro. No one was ever judging me. No one was ever looking at me and saying like, who's this kid, whatever. It's just everyone's just going on with their lives. But to someone with anxiety, especially like that in the social realm, and that feeling of being judged, it's so frustrating when people try to like explain to you that, like somebody that doesn't deal with it. Like this is, you know what I'm talking about, like when somebody that doesn't have it
like when
or get it.
When I go out and it's like I have people staring.
No, not that. I mean, like, when people that don't understand, like, depression and anxiety because they've never dealt with it, try to explain it to you. They're like, like, I would tell, like, my friends that don't deal with it, I'm like, the ones I opened up to, or even my mom sometimes, I'd be like, I have this thing where I feel like people are judging me, I have really bad social anxiety and, like, this and that, and they would be like, that's all in your head, man. Like, no one's judging you. Like, you gotta learn how to, like, and technically they're right, but at the same time, it's like, the one thing that I've realized is that no one that has a mental health problem ever wants to take advice from someone that doesn't also have understand
it's the worst.
That's what I'm trying to get at here. That's why even being with therapists is hard, because they just don't know what it's like. They
try to say the right thing.
Yeah, like the technical terms and shit.
Like they try to say, like, get the broad feeling of making you feel better.
Yeah.
But, like, what's even better is, like, when you find people who do have mental issues.
Yeah.
And, like, you can
talk to
you,
them.
like you, bro. Like, literally, when you came in, I didn't know all this. That you battled depression and everything. I thought I was literally the only one in the house. Yeah. And I was going through that isolation for that long period of time. And that podcast, when we did that podcast together, you said all those things about depression or people with depression. It was just like, I didn't feel alone anymore. Yeah. And, like, that's such a fantastic feeling.
You can't match it.
That is not even... Yeah. Because it's like, no offense to Logan, I love Logan, he's one of my best friends. Yeah. But that's why it's hard to talk with him sometimes. because like he does not deal with it at all. He doesn't battle it at all.
Nothing.
Like,
Yeah,
nothing. Nothing affects this dude.
Yeah. He's like a brick wall. I don't think I ever found like solace or like any kind of like relief or anything in life after like my addiction or into like the more mental health stuff until I found people that I could relate to. Like having a conversation about mental health or drug addiction with people that have never dealt with those demons, it's just like an exercise in futility, because like they'll just never get it. Like there's just no way to make them understand or to get the feeling of like resonance that you need from someone. And right. So it's like, yeah, like when you find that person that you're like, oh shit, I didn't know that. Like we go through a lot of the same shit. That's why, by the way, you're one of my favorite people, and I truly do love you. And for the people watching this, like I don't know if you know what our relationship is like, but you can explain it in this video. We can talk about it in a second. But I would have done this video anyways, obviously. But I have started to just because it's you. But I've started to have this. I know that the words that I'm speaking right now are touching someone right now. Yeah. Like literally, I like the feeling of knowing that when I talk right now, that someone is going to be watching this episode in, call it 3 days, that may have wanted to hurt themselves, that may have not felt like they were ever going to get out of that pit. And me talking about it, knowing because of the messages I get and how it makes people feel, that's why I'm talking about mental health, because
it's the biggest thing right now.
It's the biggest thing, and the one really, really easily understandable example of was in the worst place ever. Like, and I've never even gotten into how bad it was on anything. And like, I would talk about some of it more than usual here just because we have a longer format. Logan's not here and it's not the podcast, but like, you know, like the shit I've seen, like the amount of people I've buried, the amount of friends I've buried from drug addiction and suicide, you know, sleeping in the trunks of cars, like all the scars that you see on my legs right now, like all these are from, you know, violent things that have happened in my life. You know what I'm saying? And like this, I got this because I got thrown out of a car during a deal that went wrong. And so like I've seen like the very, very, very bottom to the point of like, you'll get your gravestone ready type shit because I was out to where I am now. So like that journey for people that are watching this makes them feel like, yo, if he was able to make it out, I can make it out.
Yeah.
And there's hope.
You give them hope.
That's it. That word.
Yeah.
Kevin Hines talks about it a lot. I talk about it in my book that's going to come out in the next, few months. That word is everything. It's literally everything. Some people will say faith. Whatever one you want to use, I talk about it in my book as a light that had all but gone out. And it was this little at the end for me right before I got off drugs in 2010. I was in my worst place ever. I hadn't slept in 2 weeks. I was smoking crack. Like I was in the worst place in my entire life. Yeah. And I remember the light was this big. I mean, there was nothing left. Like I was sorry, it's a lot, dude. It's a lot, bro. Good, bro. There's a lot to talk about. I remember I was living at my grandfather's house, like right after he had passed away. And I took care of him for like the last 4 years of his life. He had depression, dementia, Parkinson's disease, spinal cancer for the last 4 years of his life. It was a wreck. And I took care of him and I lived with him and it was just me and him. I had nowhere else to go. And I remember just like being in the attic after he died. And, I found out that he died and I went back there. He was dead and I was still living there because I had nowhere else to go. And I was in the attic and like I was using crack. I was using heroin, all this shit. And I just remember thinking, like, this is it. Like, my life's over. You know what I'm saying? Like, I had already come to terms with that. I was literally at peace with the fact that I was going to die at 25 years old. You know what I'm saying? Like, I knew it was going to happen. But for some reason, that light stayed on. I always, like, never wanted to lose that little light. And whatever it is, if you're watching this and, like, you're, like, struggling, whatever that light is, if it's faith, if it's hope, if it's your mom, if it's your dog, don't ever let it go out. Like, don't let it go out ever. Find out what it is and just try with all of your power to keep that light on no matter what happens. And then eventually, like, as you start to make the right choices in life, the light gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And now, for me, it's the sun. That story is what I want people to know. You know what I'm saying? That it got better for me from the moment I just described to you, which is hell on earth, and it's gonna get better for you too, and that's a guarantee I'm gonna make. That's a guarantee I've made all the time, from the podcast to the vlogs to this. It's going to get better for you. I promise.
Yeah, and we all go through hard times in life, whether it's on different levels. That's the one thing my parents always repeat to me, that it's gonna get better.
Yeah.
Like, you're just going through this right now.
It's
it's
a stage.
tough.
Yeah.
It's a stage.
Yeah.
It's just like a stage you're going through that you need to fight through. Maybe not fight through, just realize, like, it's gonna get better.
Yeah.
And that's really important. And we're also not saying, going back to the therapist, how they don't know what to say. Obviously, they have a degree.
Oh my God, yeah. And I've made great progress with them.
You talk about talking with other people who feel the same way. Like, maybe it's like people who deal with alcoholism, going to AA meetings and going to like these different type of groups instead of like maybe not therapists, but these
groups. Groups. Just like group settings where you're with people that have like issues or similar issues as you, and they're like-minded people that have been through the same stuff as you. From an addiction and mental health, although they go completely hand in hand, they're like they're synonymous. Like, generally every drug addict out there has some form of mental health issue, and generally a huge majority of the mental health community has a substance abuse issue. I mean, they are entangled for life. Right. But they do have slightly different approaches in terms of like how you get better. And so what we're talking about, like the group setting, is a great alcohol and drug beater. And I think a lot of people use 12-step and AA and NA for getting off drugs. I think there's good group settings for mental health as well. I think a mix is really good. Like, if you find a good therapist you really understand, you really get along with, and they do a good job of asking the right questions and breaking you down. And by the way, just for ease of this video, I was able to hold back on getting too deep right there. That you don't do that in therapy. That moment that I just had right there where I had to say, I want to keep filming this video because the last thing I need is to take a 20-minute break right now. Yeah. That's encouraged in therapy. They want to break you down. Like, they want you to break down, cry for 60 minutes and talk about everything that's ever pained you. That's the therapeutic, that's the cathartic part of therapy.
Crying's okay.
It's not just okay, it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
It really feels like when you're trying to hold it in, that's bad. Like, that's even worse for you. Then you start thinking you're a pussy or you're a bitch for crying. But it's like people who say that crying's a pussy or bitch.
I don't think there's really that many of those people left
anymore. Yeah,
there used to be your favorite celebrities, your favorite influencers. If you like rappers, the dude that you look up to who bodied 6 people this month, like whatever you're into. I hate the fact that there's people that are into that shit because at one point I was into that kind of stuff, into selling drugs and all that shit too. Whoever you look up to cries. Doesn't matter who it is. They cry when their boy dies. They cry when, something happens in their family. Everybody fucking cries. There's nobody. The person whose house we're living in, if I told you the amount of times I've seen Logan cry, your favorite influencer, maybe, other than me and Mamba, or maybe just your favorite in general, I don't fucking know. He cries all the time. Okay, so like, don't ever think for a second that crying doesn't make you tough, because he's a tough motherfucker. But he still cries. Everybody cries. It is how you cleanse the sadness out of your body. And in fact, I would say not crying is what causes sadness to turn into depression. True. Because you're locking that feeling in as opposed to letting it out.
Conversations like this, when battling with depression or any sort of mental health, that will help you get through those hard times. I made this video today to show you guys, to connect with you on a different level, to tell you that you're not alone. I've made a video like this in the past before, sort of like this, but I thought I would bring Mike in here, who's also experienced the same thing as we have. Like, 2 completely different people, 34 years old, 22 years old, dwarf, average height. We might look completely different, but we are all on the same inside.
Hell yeah.
And we all go through the same shit, no matter who you are. And I just want to connect you guys and give, like Mike said earlier, guys who don't have that sliver of hope or can't find that sliver of hope. Hopefully we gave you that shining light to help get you started, help bring you forward to a better lifestyle. Mike, I just want to thank you for coming here today and talking about this. I know it was hard. I didn't mean to get that deep with it.
I mean, I took it there. You know what I'm saying? Listen, like, the thing is, I've just gotten really good, like, sometimes I forget where my boundaries are on like shit that how comfortable I even am talking, because I'm gonna go all the way to, wait till you read the book. Like the book is
I can't wait.
everything. It's everything. I don't skip anything. It's everything I've ever done wrong, everything I've ever done right. It's everything. And so it's so like graphic and visceral. It is hard to talk about sometimes, but that's the art of it. And that's why it makes it so important. There's a stigma there that we need to remove, and just hopefully just watching this video made you feel better. And like, I just want to reiterate one more time that like, I tell people this when I meet them on the street. I tell Evan this. I tell everybody this. Like, there won't ever come a day where I feel any different than you. Like, whoever you are watching this video, we are the same person. The ability for you to do what I've done, or for me to do what you've done, or whatever, it's all the same. We're all the same people. We're all people that are dealing with the same struggles, the same, you know, demons in life. And so like, I just want like these videos and me telling my story and you telling your story and these conversations to just drive people and encourage people, and to make sure that we keep reminding people that things are going to get better. Not things might get better, not things could get better, but things 100% will get better in your life if you just keep that little light shining.
And everyone goes through tough times in life. There's no such thing as a perfect life. I'm sorry, but there's not. Even if you're born into riches or fame, they still go through shit too. Everyone goes through hard shit in their life. 100, no doubt.
Yeah, and just one last note from me too on that point. A lot of people ask me, they're like, oh, like, would you do it different? Because I think some of the stuff, some of the depression, some of the anxiety people have are based on like things they wish they had done differently, or like regrets and that kind of stuff. If I'm not the example of how like doing everything wrong is actually doing everything right in the end, like I wouldn't change anything, bro. There's not one thing that I would go back and do differently, because all of it has led to a place where I now have a platform to talk about this kind of stuff. And so if I had to go through a lot of additional pain, and like, I hate to say it, Mom, but like if my mom had to go through some additional pain and my members of my family had to go through it a little bit, because it wasn't them, but they had to watch it and it was hard, extremely hard for them, right, then like hopefully it was all worth it, so that in the end we're able to give you the hope and courage to get through whatever you're going through.
Yes. Well, very well said. Thank you again, Mike, for coming out here. My hands are sweaty. Sorry. It's been a lot. Oh, God. Sorry. Well, thank you guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. There was a lot. Hopefully it was very motivational, like I said. And thank you all for watching. Hope everyone has a fantastic day. And remember, there is hope, and it will get better. Mamba